Goblins in WoW are considered to be greedy and somewhat villainous. However, I'm here to set the record straight and explain why they are actually the only good guys in WoW. And I'm talking about the goblins in classic WoW, not the abomination which is the post-cataclysm goblin. Now, to address the unfair criticism that goblins get, which is their greed, this is completely untrue. If you look at how they do business, they actually provide free of charge transportation to the Horde with the Zeppelins. You can transport yourself from Kalimdor to Eastern Kingdoms and vice versa with the Goblin Zeppelins, and they do not charge you a single gold. Completely free of charge. And they're not even aligned with the Horde, not yet anyway, but if they charge like 1 gold to go onto the Zeppelin, you'd pay it. They could have had a complete monopoly on the market, which they could have exploited, but they chose not to. Another big thing is justice. Now, like all good ANCAPs, they are very serious when it comes to the non-aggression principle. Now, if you start any kind of beef in their territory, whether that be Booty Bay, Ratchet, or wherever, they will come down on you hard. There'll be some goblin guards that will come out and just kill you on the spot, on site, no questions asked. You attack a player one time, it's over for you. They even have nets so that you can't run away. So like, even if you want to leave the scene of the crime, no, they're gonna catch you. These guys care about justice. Now, to some critics of the goblins, they will say that this is a very heavy-handed approach to security in their towns and cities. However, if we look at it from the context of the World of Warcraft, they realize that any cross-faction combat can escalate really quickly and gets really ugly. So their incentive is to squash that as soon as possible, and that is exactly what they do. Before any large-scale PvP war takes place, they crush the aggression instantly. No questions asked, and it works. Because if you don't do this, you have a South Shore versus Terran Mill scenario, where simple world PvP escalates into an entire war. The goblins don't want that to happen, they want to keep the peace, and they do that free of charge. They provide the security free of charge to either Alliance or Horde. They don't discriminate. That's another big thing that is noteworthy about the goblins. They don't discriminate. You can compare goblins to gnomes, and a lot of people will say that because they're like technology focused little guys that they are similar, but this is not the case. You see, the big difference between the goblins and gnomes is that the gnomes are just racist. So the gnomes got kicked out of their city. There was some kind of plague thing that went on, and like horrible mutated monsters took it over, whatever. So like there's a quest to go into Gnomeregan and, you know, reclaim their city, right? Like, surely that's what the gnomes want, right? However, here's the kicker. If you're not Alliance, the gnomes won't even talk to you. So even if you want to help the gnomes reclaim their city of Gnomeregan, they won't even give you the time of day if you're an orc, troll, or whatever. Like, you have to be on the Alliance for them to even hear you out. Contrast this with the goblins, who will literally talk to anybody and cooperate with anybody. They ensure that their cities are a safe hub for both Horde and Alliance and serve them equally. There's no discrimination. And the goblins actually are the only race that is trying to actively get cooperation between the Horde and the Alliance. And they do this by trade. A very interesting thing with Goblin cities is that there's a cross-faction auction house. Now, this cross-faction auction house basically never gets used, but the fact that it's there shows that they're laying out the foundations of cross-faction trade. And this is a super big deal. Historically, if there are two factions that have trade cooperation with each other, and they're both reliant on each other for trade, they're less inclined to go to war and, you know, start beef with each other. This is part of the reason why USA and China aren't necessarily at war. Both of them rely on each other for different things, and they both trade with each other, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Even if it does get rocky at some times, there's still the reality that you are trying to help the other side to some degree, even if it is for your own gain. Now, the goblins are trying to set up a similar scenario between the Horde and the Alliance. They don't want the two factions fighting. They'd prefer that they trade via their auction house and have some cooperation. I don't see the gnomes doing this. On the other hand, the gnomes are sitting outside Gnomeregan just crying and whining, and if a Horde member comes along and tries to help them, they just shun them. So we've covered a lot of ground here. So already with the goblins, they have quite a lot of good things in their favor. However, there is one thing to the goblins which is noteworthy, and that is that they are actually pushing the envelope in terms of new technology. If you go into various places where goblins have a presence, you'll typically see these guys do things that are way advanced compared to the other races in WoW. These guys have oil refineries, so they understand and can predict the future, which is not horse and carriage and griffin, but no, oil-run machinery. These guys are thinking so far ahead, and they have a good reason for wanting the oil. They actually have some equipment that actually helps them with being productive. The goblin shredders. Although goblins may be small and quite frail, when it comes to doing heavy lifting, they don't need to get some big strong animal to do that work for them. No, they have a shredder to do that. And they might even have access to the internet, which sounds insane, but if you look at a goblin shredder, there's actually a screen which looks to be like a live video feed of Kerrigan from StarCraft. I don't know why, but just taking this on face value, they're in a video call with a woman, so they've invented the internet that they use to communicate on these shredders. Like, holy shit. And remember, if the goblins had their way, they wouldn't be the World of Warcraft. It'd be the world of trade. They don't want the Horde and Alliance to fight. They want them to be peaceful, and they'll either use the honey or the vinegar to get that done. I don't see any other race holding out the olive branch like that. Another thing is that the goblins have created systems of economics which allows some people to make an immense amount of personal wealth. Trade Prince Gallywix in, later expansions beyond Classic WoW has like a swimming pool and like a mansion. I mean, when do you ever see a WoW character with a mansion? These little guys work hard, they have good intentions, and they're prospering from it. Meanwhile, the gnomes are just outside Nomogun crying and being racist. It's blatantly obvious who the good guys in WoW are. It's the goblins.